Welcome to the Post Sports Chat. I'm Drew Rubenstein here with Justin Jackson, who's getting ready to make a trip to Ames, Iowa for the WVU Iowa State men's basketball game. And Justin, WVU men's basketball team is coming off back-to-back disappointing losses where they just simply got dominated in the paint.
Yeah.
And a lot of explanations and reasons from the coaches and players, but it seems like a lot of it kind of stems around one of two factors: lack of personnel or lack of defensive commitment. What's your take with what's gone on in recent games?
You know, I think it could probably be a mixture of both, and probably a good mixture of both. I mean, this West Virginia team hasn't been a good defensive team pretty much from the beginning of the season now. I mean, have there been a couple of games where, you know, that they stepped up and played good defense? I mean, you know, sure. But, you know, if you go from game 1 to game 30 or 29 or whatever it is now, consistently they have allowed points. They've given up good shooting percentages. They have not guarded well in the paint, and there've been other times they haven't guarded well on the perimeter either. So you know, it's a lack of it's a mixture of having a lot of youth and not a lot of experience in the paint. It's a mixture of just not having a lot of good defenders on the team. So when you have that, it makes it very hard. But I think what Coach Huggins was talking about the other day in his press conference is, you know, when you have a lack of commitment, when you don't go out and try to get better, when you're told to do it one way and you continue to do it the other way, I think that's what frustrates him the most.
When you look at the last couple games, I don't know, is it just a matter of bad matchup issues, or is the reason to concern for WVU that maybe teams are really figuring out where WVU's greatest weakness is and maybe exploiting it, especially now that they're facing these teams for a second time more than they did the first time?
And I think in particular Baylor and Texas, I mean, what really is kind of West Virginia's downfall is playing against teams that have good size, and Texas and Baylor both have good size, and you can say, well, they beat Baylor on the road in the first game. And well, there's things you can do to counterbalance size. And against Baylor, they forced a number of turnovers and an 18-0 difference in points off turnovers. They didn't do that the second game. So when you don't get other things working for you to counterbalance the size disadvantage you have, it's going to be a tough matchup for them. Texas killed them in the paint. Baylor in the second game killed them in the paint, and that's really kind of going to be their downfall because, you know, their big guys aren't going to get any more experience this year. You know, you can't make them sophomores or juniors automatically, and you know, you certainly can't make them any bigger. You know, they're probably not going to grow much more. So it's what, you know, the disadvantages you have now, you're going to be facing the rest of the season.
But Iowa State is one of the most explosive offenses in the Big 12. Team that WVU, I mean, was on fire in the first meeting, beat 102-77, maybe arguably WVU's greatest, most impressive victory of the season. This rematch, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is obviously the way the game ended in an ugly scene where Aaron Harris gets ejected after hitting an Iowa State player on the head, and you've spoken to Aaron. An Iowa State player also got a technical in that late game situation. How will that stuff play into this rematch here?
It will play in with the Iowa State fan base. I mean, you know, the student section specifically. You know, Hilton Coliseum is a very tough place to play. Anyway, it's probably one of the toughest home arenas in the Big 12, maybe outside of Kansas. And so, you know, when you have this kind of thing hovering over in the game, I mean, the students are certainly going to let him hear it, and I'm sure they'll come up with some clever little chants or whatnot. And so, you know, speaking to Aaron about it, you know, he knows it, he expects it, kind of talks it off, saying, you know, he's just going to go out and play his game, and he's not going to let that be the focus for him. And that's probably the right thing for him to say. And really, going off his personality, that's probably what he'll do. I'm sure he'll hear the chants, but he'll keep his focus on the game. Coach Huggins said during the Big 12 conference call that he will speak with Aaron at practice today, or maybe after practice, and you know, they'll kind of talk about the situation. But you know, really, as far as that goes, it'll be more for the fans, more so than Aaron, I think, or the matchup between WVU and Iowa State personally.
And you mentioned some of WVU's defensive deficiencies and what they did well against Iowa State. I guess the one wild card that we haven't mentioned at this point is Terry Henderson, who didn't play Saturday due to flu-like symptoms, according to Coach Huggins. But I mean, without him, and I guess at this point he could come back, but really that's WVU's offense relies on three, and if you take away him, then it seems like they just don't have enough to make up for it.
Well, if you talk about beating Iowa State, you kind of have to outscore them because, they're a little bit like West Virginia in the fact that they can score a lot of points. So they have 4 starters averaging double figures, and they have, Melvin Ejim is the leading scorer in the conference, and DeAndre Kane, the point guard's averaging, his numbers are very similar to what Juwan Staten's are. He averages a lot of points, rebounds, and assists. He's very good in all 3 categories. George's Nying is right up there in the top 10 in scoring. Is a very good scoring forward. They shoot a lot of threes, but they also give up a lot of points, and they give up a lot of threes, and they give up points in transition. They're not one of the better defensive teams in the conference. So you kind of have to outscore them, and that's kind of where Terry would come into play is if he's healthy and is available to play, and if he's shooting well. You kind of throw him in there with Juwan and Heron. It kind of gives them one more guy to firepower to kind of counterattack what Iowa State's going to throw at them because the Cyclones are certainly going to shoot the ball much better, I think, at home than what they did at the Coliseum. So it's a matter of whether or not you can kind of outscore them. Iowa State's not a big physical team, so WVU kind of can match up with them a little bit in that sense. It'll be a matter of whether or not WVU's making shots and if they can keep up with Iowa State.
Last one for you. Last couple weeks we've discussed NCAA tournament after back-to-back losses to Texas and Baylor. 4 games remaining going into the Big 12 tournament. Aside from winning the Big 12 conference tournament, it seems like you got to win these next 4 if you want a shot at getting in.
Yeah, I mean, you got to win the next 4 and then, at least 1 in the Big 12 tournament, I would assume, or maybe 2. The NIT tournament also comes into play because if you're not successful in these last 4, then you don't go to the Big 12 tournament and don't win a game there, it makes it bubble watch for the NIT. So it could go either way at this point. If you get on a good run, there's still is that possibility for the NCAA tournament. On paper, it looks very difficult because obviously Iowa State's very good, and you finish the season against Kansas, which is number 5 in the country, and then also you throw an Oklahoma game in there on the road, and that's never easy. I would say they have a shot, but they have to go out and win.
Yeah. Still have work to do to get into the NIT even. So.
Yeah, right.
Very good. Justin, appreciate your time once again. Please continue to check thedpost.com for the latest on the Mountaineers. Thanks for watching today.